Balance sheet. Wait a minute. I'm chatting right now. Who can read? I need somebody who can you read? Talk to me about the balance sheet. What does that say? Just read it. Don't think about it. Just read it.
The balance sheet displays the company's total assets and how these assets are financed through either debt or equity. It can also be referred to as statement of net worth or statement of financial position. The balance sheet is based on the fundamental equation, assets equal liabilities plus equity.
All right. That anything on this sheet, this first sheet, you might see on the quiz. Because all of that was really good, relevant information. It could be a statement of net worth. It could be your financial position. And I can assure you that you're going to see again, the balance sheet is based on the fundamental equation, assets equals liabilities plus equity. Focus in on assets equals liabilities plus equity. The second page is a balance sheet. Now I gave you one as an example. This is a better example. And if you were to be tested, this is what it would look like. I will give you the information. You just need to fill in the appropriate points. And I'm trying to get that done so that it's online. All you have to do is go on your computer to do that. But this is an example company, and it looks like their assets and their liabilities are at $770,000. Pretty good.
$481,000.
I'm sorry?
For liabilities, that's what's going out, right?
Mm-hmm. But your assets is a function of your liabilities and the equity. And the equity. That's why I said, remember that equation. So let's take a look at the following sheet. And let's read about what assets are. Here's where we got into a little bit of a discussion during the last class. So I'm going to read this one for you. Examples of assets are likely to be listed on the balance sheet. Could be cash, could be a temporary investment, some type of accounts receivable. That's money you are expecting. Inventory. When you run around doing those monthly inventories, at the end of that month, all of those should add up at a year, at the end of the year, and give you an inventory posture, some prepaid expenses, some long-term investments. Land, this building that you're sitting in is an asset. Equipment, furniture, fixtures. You jumped up and down about vehicles last class, as I recall. So when someone asks you to list your assets, although the vehicle might be draining you financially, it is an asset. It is an asset. It talks about goodwill. So the following sheet talks about current assets. And that's things that have a lifespan with less than a year. Less than a year. Very good test question there. The current assets are things that typically have a lifespan less than a year. Meaning I can take that, sell it, get money. If I had a vehicle on there, I can take that, sell it, get money fairly quickly. I can do that in about 2 days. Do that in about 2 days. So we talked about accounts receivables. They consist of short-term obligations owed to the company by its clients. Companies often sell their products and services to customers on credit. That could be a current asset. And so we'll stay there for the current assets part. The other part of that, the following page, it took that raw materials, work in progress. There's an example there. A manufacturing firm will carry a large number of raw materials, while a retail firm carries none. All assets, all current, something that can be turned over very quickly. Non-current assets on the following sheet. Who likes to read? I need it. Yes, sir. Should read what non-current assets are.
Non-current assets are assets that are not turned into cash easily, are expected to be turned into cash within a year, and/or have a lifespan of more than a year. They can refer to tangible assets such as machinery, computers, buildings, and land. Non-current assets also can be intangible assets such as goodwill, patents, or copyright. While these assets are not physical in nature, they are often the resources that can make or break a company. The value of a brand name, for instance, should not be underestimated.
That swoosh that is on your Nike gear is worth $1 gazillion. That is part of their asset management, and it goes on their balance sheet in some way, shape, or form. So it's not just Nike. That little swoosh is has a value to it. Yes, sir.
So essentially an asset is, if I can sell this as a company down to the chair, it's an asset.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Now, some lawyers will make arguments about that. So what I'm trying to do is stay in the highlights. If Nike tried to sell its company right now, there would be some significant issues there. Significant. You guys tennis players?
Why would it, is it because of the sponsors?
Well, how do I value, now I have a value for my swoosh, but when I go to sell it, how do I know? And then what are you gonna do with that because that's part of Nike. So, once I sell that organization to you, does the swoosh mean anything to you anymore? Are you gonna change? So there might be some legal implications relative to that. Meaning, if I sell this to you, you have to keep the swoosh. Of course, the receiving company may not want to do that. So, be careful of the fact that there could be some legal considerations. But for purposes of the test and understanding in this class, that swoosh is an asset as well. Vickery, had your hand up? Okay. And so the next sheet talks about depreciation. Here's where things get a little funky. Depreciation is calculated and deducted from most of these assets, which represents the economic cost of the asset over its useful life. So if you go back to that example on the second page, there is a negative value about halfway down on the left-hand side. That is $56,000. That is a depreciation amount. So for everything that's up there, you still subtract out that depreciation. And I will tell you this, if you do not have a depreciation value, your balance sheet will not. You won't balance. You're not gonna balance. And you overlook the fact that depreciation is part of your asset. Okay? Make sure when we're looking at this in the future that you understand depreciation is part of your asset. Now, why do you think that's the case? Why is depreciation an asset for you? Good.
Because you can claim it, I guess, on your taxes next year. You can write it off, maybe. You can say, okay, so
Okay.
I made this much money, then I lost this much because of.
Okay.
Maybe,
Come up. Yes.
maybe because you want to know how you're going to replace that money that you lost.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
Kind of like a gauge so you know, from the start when it depreciates where you're at. Exactly.
All right. Angel?
That's how much you paid off already, so you owe less on property, or?
That's not necessarily how much you paid off, but who were we talking about when you drive your car off the lot? I asked you if it was an asset or a liability. The second you take that car off the lot, it begins to depreciate. So what it does is it kind of brings your asset to an evaluation that accounts for the fact that just because I purchased it, it's worth $10,000, but once I set it somewhere, it may be significantly less than that 10 grand. You had your hand up?
I did it now.
Okay.
Oh, actually, I do know. So the life cycle. So depreciation, it's to know how much you're supposed to keep in inventory because the life cycle of the product may exceed.
Okay, very good. So if you buy a sack of beans and it's worth $100 to you, you put it down there in your storeroom, it has some lesser value the longer it's down there. So you have to assign a depreciation value to that sack of beans. Now, I'm sorry? Question?
Yeah, so how often did the depreciation happen?
There are, trying to help you with that. There are values associated, like general values, like your car loses $1,000 every 2 weeks. So it's an industry-specific value. It's probably the best way to address it. Some companies, however, they feel more strongly about that swoosh. And so their depreciation might be a little bit more relative to the overall value of that swoosh or the intended value 5 or 10 years from now. I would like to say that's a nebulous figure, but at some point you have to pin it back to something. So it's probably more industry specific. So in general, there is, for a car, for example, you know, it could be $1,000 a year, it could be $1,000 a month, but it also depends on the value of the vehicle.
How do you come up with the number?
Like I said, it's industry specific. So once you start to see what other companies are doing, then your number should be somewhere, give it plus or minus a few percentage points. Okay? Any other questions? Do not forget that depreciation is an asset on your balance sheet. Then there are things such as non-current assets. Did we just read that?
Yes.
Did you read that?
Read the whole thing.
Okay. Any other questions about the balance sheet? Or at least the assets portion of the balance sheet? Here's what I'll ask you to do. At some time you get some free time just sitting around, look up online some of the things that you see in here. All right? Now I'm not gonna ask you all of that stuff, but it'll help you to understand why it goes on. Yeah. And then if you have a question, bring it to class. We'll try to solve it as a class. All right? But I want you guys to have the right answers and the right attitude when you see this in terms of being able to put it on the balance sheet. Yes?
Just a quick question. So what does goodwill mean?
Ooh, great question.
I mean, I could look it up.
What do you think, Lee?
Goodwill?
Yes.
Well, so the term goodwill is, like charity, giving, maybe?
Okay,
I'm thinking something like that.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Get Henry.
Yes. So I understand what you're saying, that how it balances out and whatnot. I'm sorry, what was it? Is this in regards to?
No.
Just launch it. Give me a question. Launch it
Well,
out.
'cause
You lost it?
Yeah.
Question here. Up here. Yeah, question up here?
Yeah, so what is goodwill though? So I understand that it's shared revenue.
Mhm.
But why is that? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so, like, yeah.
What makes it an
How does
asset?
how does that become an asset?
Think about accounts receivable based on your question. And you're gonna get something out of goodwill. So as, from your organization, we're gonna talk about corporate social responsibility. Your organization kind of gets something out of providing goodwill to whomever or whatever the cause is. So you can consider that an asset on the balance sheet. Okay, yes?
Is that like investing in people, or pretty much like getting like
You do community
strong,
projects?
like customer base, or
So how do you value a community project?
if the public sees that you actually care and that you are willing to put money into the community, then I would look at it as a way where it kind of develops trust with that company.
Okay, so how do you evaluate trust? That's kind of a nebulous figure. It's kind of a nebulous figure, but it's something that you feel you are providing. Now, having said that, I would submit to you that probably some companies balance based on their goodwill. Meaning they regularly do stuff out in the community. But there's a value associated with that because you're getting something back. So that is an asset to your organization. Yes, sir.
Is, when a company's doing this and they're valuing up all their assets, is that regulated, or can they overvalue their stuff and make it look like that company's worth more, or how does that?
So that is a very good question, and I go back to an industry standard. So if 5 companies are building projects, or renovating projects, each one of them may consider that goodwill. There is probably a normal figure, depending on the size of it, or that you can allow that to be a goodwill contribution on the asset side. That make sense?
So if I'm an investor, I'm looking at 5 different companies and their values or whatever, and one's way off compared to everybody else, they probably overvalue.
They could be overvaluing their goodwill, but for that company, that's what makes their balance sheet balance. And I'm not saying you fudge this number, I'm just saying there's an industry standard, and if you're way off somewhere, you don't fix it there. But if you really are doing a bunch of good stuff in the community, you can kind of make an assessment from a financial standpoint, from a goodwill standpoint. Here's where the company rests. Yes, sir.
So goodwill could be calculated by, like man hours, right? So if this person is worth $60 an hour, and they do like 10 hours a year, 600.
No. You have to look at the company as a whole.
Okay.
Now, I would say this, well, no, that's a hard comparison. So you have to look at the company as a whole, what they're doing, their investments in the community, things of that nature. Right? Try not to take that down to an individual.
Okay.
Although the individuals are probably providing most of that.
Right.
But they're representing the organization. And in the aggregate or collectively, there's a value associated with that.
Got it.
Hand up over here.
I think
We're discussing how it's determined.
Stretching out?
We're discussing how it's determined.
Oh.
How the value.
Okay, so at some point, in some points it can be kind of nebulous, but most companies know that if I'm doing $1 billion in the inner city of Chicago, that represents $500,000 in goodwill. It's not something they're trying to fudge. It's just there's a value associated with the amount of money that you're pumping back into a community. Okay, and most times lawyers get to jumping up and down about all this stuff. But you, as a company, know exactly what you're worth. Yes, sir.
So, my question is, reading this cost breakdown, if you, like, what I know you said the equity plus the liabilities equals the assets.
Focus on the left-hand side. We'll get to that other stuff. Don't worry about the equity that goes. We'll talk about it.
Okay, so I'm just like wondering, like, is this like an additional, okay, 2,100 plus 100 plus 10,000 plus 40,500 plus, you know,
Yeah.
everyone else. All this stuff is just added up to have a total of 770, but then obviously I look at the liabilities and obviously that's what it is coming out.
Yeah, well, let's not look at liability.
Alright.
So, yeah, one step at a time.
Alright.
But you're right, at the end of the year, this is probably a small to mid-sized company, just looking at. This is typically how they use it. How much money I have on hand, how much my cars are worth, my building is worth a couple $1,000. That's what you see there. Don't worry about this stuff over here. This liability stuff and the stockholder equity stuff, a little bit more complicated. All right. So this is what is. Again, depreciation's a little nebulous. Goodwill might be a little nebulous, but the rest of the stuff is factored in everything. You've done 12 months of inventory. At the end of 12 months, you have $5,000 in inventory. No disputing it. I've got 3 cars out there worth $5,000. At the end of the year, I've got $15,000 in vehicle inventory. No disputing that. Those are facts, and it's hard to change. And when you start changing them, believe me, people will know. People will know. Good enough? All right, why don't we take about 10 minutes? Come back at, question? No questions? All right, I'm gonna put this online so that you'll have it. Good discussion so far.